Hi guys. If you don't remember me, I am Miss O'Brien and I am going to be teaching your next unit on Long Way Down. Yesterday, I talked a little bit in my video about how the book is structured and how it works and the way it's written. And today, I'm going to go more in depth about exactly the way it's written, what that's called, and some tips and some things to look for while you're reading. So today's day one. Let's dive right in to some stuff. Okay. So yesterday I talked about how this novel is in free verse. So there's prose and there's verse. And most of everything that you read is written in prose. So magazines, newspapers, your textbooks, usual fiction books, nonfiction books, they're all written in prose. Those are your paragraphs, your natural flow of speech, the way that you talk, that is prose. And then there's verse. Verse is usually your poetry. So it's got the rhyme scheme, it's got the metrical form, usually poems. And an example of verse is something like, friendship is grand, we go through life hand in hand. Friendship is a lovely heart, when you go through life never apart. So you have that rhyme scheme, you have that metrical structure. So you have grand and hand, and you have heart and apart. That is verse. That's usually what you find in your poetry. Our novel that we're reading, Long Way Down by Jason Reynolds, it's written in free verse. So think of free verse as you're free. So you're free from the metrical structure. You're free from the rhyme. You basically get to follow kind of your own rules. So you'll see that Jason Reynolds, in fact, does that. He writes in his own way. However, he uses little tools to help him still have a cool form and way of writing that sticks with the reader that we're going to go more into. So just to recap again, prose is that written or spoken language in its ordinary form without the metrical structure. So that's your everyday writing. If you write in paragraphs and you text, that's the way you text. It's the way you speak, all right? That's the easiest way that people write, and that's the most common way. But we're gonna look specifically at free verse, which is the open form of poetry that uses no formal meter patterns or rhyme and tends to follow the natural rhythm of speech. So that's what we're looking at. So here's an example of prose if you can't think of it on the top of your head. So there's a picture right there to your left that's straight out of a book. It follows that paragraph by paragraph. It's structured on that page, and it follows the natural way that we speak. So again, no formal meter or structure, natural flow of speech, ordinary grammatical structure, nothing crazy. And then you're gonna find it in your textbooks, your novels, your newspapers, your magazines. But then we have free verse. And this is actually a picture from our book. That's the first page. That's the first excerpt. You can just tell right off the bat that it is completely different. That giant page only has those tiny little blocks of writing. So it looks like a poem, right? It looks just like a poem does if you looked up a Shakespeare poem online. Structured the same way, but it doesn't have the rhyme. It doesn't have the metrical structure that a normal verse poem would, because it's free verse, right? So it uses rolling and tumbling sequences of words, and they sort of like dance together and come together, and you create these like sounds, repetition of sounds, and sometimes words, and they stick with you as a reader. And it's called consonants and assonants. We're going to talk about those in the next few slides. And you can also use things like repetition, alliteration, metaphors and similes. All of these things create a rhythm within the writing, and it creates a response within the reader when you have those repeating sounds coming over and over again. Even if it doesn't rhyme, because it's free verse, you still have a rhythmic flow to it. And as you read, you're going to notice that. You're going to notice how it just flows. It's not like normal talk. Even though it follows the natural form of speech, it has a sort of rhythm to it. And we'll talk about how that happens. So this is how it happens. These are some vocab words that are going to help you figure out that rhythm and pull out pieces of the text as you read to see how Jason Reynolds is creating that free verse rhythm within the text. So your first one is a metaphor. A metaphor is a figure of speech that directly refers to one thing by mentioning another. So usually it compares two unlike ideas. And I know you've seen this a million times. It could be something like the snowflakes danced. So you're saying a snowflake is dancing, but you're not using like or as to compare it like you would with a simile. It doesn't, metaphors do not use like or as. So another example where his eyes were ice as he stared. So eyes were ice. So that is your metaphor. And then you have similes, a figure of speech that directly compares the similarities between two things using words like or as. So some examples are as cold as ice. You've heard that a lot, right? She was as cold as ice. So using the as cold as ice, right? And then another one could be life is like a box of chocolates. So you're comparing life to a box of chocolates and connecting it with the word like. So that's a simile. And then we get into the harder ones. So you have assonance. So assonance is a resemblance in the sounds of words or syllables, either between their vowels or between their consonants. So most likely assonance is going to be found with the repetition of a vowel sound. So it's going to be your A, E, I, O, U, different sounds repeating in a sentence. So an example of assonance would be Kay plays a game away. So you have that repetition of the A sound. Kay plays a game away. You have that the A sound, that's assonance. Or you have no ghost went over for roast. You have the O sound. No ghost went over for roast. That is assonance, that repetition of that vowel. So you're going to find that so common throughout Long Way Down. A next one is meter. So meter is a basic rhythmic structure of a verse or lines in verse. Again, we have free verse, so ours doesn't necessarily have to rhyme. We don't have to follow a meter. Jason Reynolds, he doesn't usually follow a meter, but every once in a while you might see some rhyming words, and that is an example of meter. So if you see those rhyming words, that's meter. Next is alliteration. Alliteration is the repetition of identical initial consonant sounds, closely associated syllables within a group of words. So it's the same sound being repeated over and over again. So an example would be Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers, that P sound over and over and over again. That's alliteration. Or you have a black bug bit a black bear. The B sound, black bug, black bear, that's alliteration, the repetition of one sound just over and over again. And then we have repetition. Repetition is the simple repeating of a word or words within a text. So if you just see one word happening over and over and over again, that is repetition. So if you think of like a takeout bag from a store, it usually says like, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you down the front of the bag. That's repetition. So the thank you is being repeated over and over again. Okay, so we already went over assonance, which is the vowel sound repeated. Now we have consonance, which is the repetition of similar consonants in words. Okay, so an example of consonants would be the lumpy, bumpy road made me jump. Okay, so we have the MP sound, the bumpy, lumpy road made me jump. We have the MP over and over again. Or you can think of another one. I squished onto the cushion to wish for shells. I squished onto the cushion to wish for shells. That SH sound, the sh, that's being repeated, right? Squished, cushion, wished, shells. That's consonants, that repetition of those sounds within the word, and they're not vowels, they're consonants. That is the example. And then again, we have free verse and prose repeated on the definition slide. That, again, we went over it already. Free verse is the open form of poetry that doesn't follow a rhythmic meter or structure. And then prose is just your normal everyday writing that you see all the time. So here are more examples of our definition, just so I hope you guys get a better understanding. So repetition, when words or phrases are repeated in a work. So again, down, 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 down. That repetition of the word down, that is it. Alliteration, a series of words that begin with the same consonant sound. Pressed our lips to the pavement and prayed. That P sound is being repeated throughout the work. So that is alliteration. And then we have consonants. This is one of the harder ones, right? Consonants occurs when sounds, not letters, repeat, okay? So traffic figures on July 4th to be tough. Traffic figures on July 4th to be tough. So that sound, even if it's the GH making the F sound, it's still the same sound. So traffic figures on July 4th to be tough. That is consonants, that repetition of that sound. Then we have assonance. I know these are the two that get really confusing and harder to pick out and understand. The assonance is the resemblance in the sound of words or syllables between the vowels or consonants. So example is the rain in Spain falls mainly in the plains. That AI sound, that A sound, that is assonance, right? So we'll go back. Consonance is the sounds, not the letters, repeat. Assonance, you have the letters repeating that make the same sound. I know it's confusing, but you can come back and look at the definitions. They'll be posted every day if you need help or need more examples. Then we have metaphor, which is a figure of speech containing an implied comparison without using like or as. So life is a roller coaster, comparing life to a ride without that comparison word. And then you have simile, which is the opposite, figure of speech that compares to different things while using that like or as connecting verb. Her soul was as black as coal. So using the as to compare her soul to the color of coal. So just so you guys can see some examples of what this free verse is going to look like in your book if you haven't started reading yet, this is what you're going to see on a page. This is a full page of text. This is why it's a really fast read, because on a whole page, you only have like 20 words. So it's super fast, super fun, but it doesn't look like a normal text is going to look like. So as you see, it says, I don't know you, don't know your last name. If you got brothers or sisters or mothers or fathers or cousins, that be like brothers and sisters, or aunties or uncles, that be like mothers and fathers. So as I read that, even though it follows that natural flow of speech, it still has some type of rhythmic structure to it. So as I read, like, it flows together unlike a normal speech would, unlike normal talking does. And the other one, it says, it's so hard to say, Sean's dead, Sean's dead, Sean's dead. So strange to say, so sad, but I guess not surprising, which I guess is even stranger and even sadder. Those spaces, they create pauses, natural pauses within you as a reader. And that's going to change the way you speak and the way you read it. It's going to change it. So it's going to create a different type of pattern within you as you read, and you're going to create those natural pauses. It's going to make you stop and think. It's going to make you think about what's happening and what the writer and what Jason Reynolds wants you to pull from it. Those pauses are put there intentionally. That spacing is intentional. Pay attention to it. Try to pull out the assonance, the consonants, the alliteration, the repetition. It's there. It may be harder to find, but it's there, and it's creating that rhythmic pattern in the text that you're going to find. So I hope this helped you guys, and I hope that as you read, you guys can start pulling out all of these things I went over. And again, I'm going to post it every single day. You're going to have the definitions every day. So if you want to go back and look as you're reading and pull the definitions side by side, you'll have it with you. But try to find all of these different examples of consonants, assonance, repetition, alliteration. Find it as you read It's fun to try to find and look for it. And if you see yourself or hear yourself as you're reading, creating those natural pauses, or you feel a rhythmic structure as you're reading, or if you listen to the text, because I'm posting the audio every day, if you hear it, stop and write it down. Reference the page number. Remember where it was at. It's going to help you at the end of the unit to go back and be able to look at where those definitions were found within the text. So if you guys have any questions, please feel free to email me. Feel free to reach out to me, message me, anything. I'll help answer your questions. But yeah, that's it for today. Good luck on your reading.